Good morning. It is Friday, April 3rd, 2026. This is your deep dive daily briefing. I am your anchor, delivering a comprehensive analysis of the pivotal events that have defined the last 12 hours. We begin our broadcast on the world stage, where the strategic landscape of the Middle East has entered a phase of extreme volatility following a significant shift in rhetoric from Washington. In a high-stakes address late last night, United States President Donald Trump signaled a departure from recent de-escalation efforts, stating that the objectives of Operation Epic Fury have not yet been achieved. This pivot follows a 5-day military reprieve that had offered a brief window for diplomacy in Geneva. However, the president has now suggested that strikes on Iranian electrical grids and power plants are a distinct possibility, warning of a campaign that could significantly degrade the nation's industrial capacity. On the ground, the situation remains highly kinetic as the Iranian Revolutionary Guard continues its maritime provocations, with at least 24 commercial vessels reportedly hit since the start of the conflict. While 13 UN member states have co-sponsored a text condemning the obstruction of the Strait of Hormuz, the waterway remains effectively a war zone, leaving the prospect of a regional ceasefire more fragile than at any point since the February 28 escalation.
Transitioning from the front lines of conflict to the broader global economy, the narrative is being driven by the visceral reaction of energy markets to the threat of intensified hostilities. Crude oil prices have surged to their highest levels since early March, with West Texas Intermediate soaring toward the $120 per barrel mark following the White House's latest warnings. This supply shock is occurring as the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the International Energy Agency announced the formation of a special coordination group to manage what they describe as one of the largest energy supply shortages in global history. Despite a projected global growth rate of 3.3% for 2026, economists warn that the persistent closure of the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's petroleum typically flows, is creating a structural drag on industrial productivity. Manufacturers across Europe and Asia are now facing a period of constrained stability, where the high cost of energy is being compounded by new trade surcharges and the forced front-loading of inventories.
In the realm of finance, all eyes are on the credit markets as they process the dual pressures of geopolitical risk and a sudden contraction in private lending. Overnight, the private credit sector faced a significant stress test as Blue Owl Capital moved to limit withdrawals from two of its major funds following a surge in redemption requests. This move has sent ripples through Wall Street, raising concerns about the liquidity of the non-bank lending structures that have heavily financed the recent artificial intelligence boom. Simultaneously, the 10-year United States Treasury yield remains elevated at 4.35%, reflecting investor anxiety over sticky inflation and the long-term cost of sustained regional instability. As the market prepares for today's non-farm payrolls report, the financial sector is also weighing the impact of potential mega IPOs, with SpaceX reportedly filing confidentially for a listing that could become the largest in history, even as investors rotate toward defensive assets amidst the mounting uncertainty.
Turning our attention to the technology sector, the focus has shifted toward the high-stakes paradox of massive valuation expansion and growing infrastructure risks. A report released this morning by Hanyang University highlights a growing concern that the AI revolution is being built on a foundation of hidden credit accumulation and unrealized future returns. While companies like NVIDIA and Broadcom continue to see unprecedented demand for AI hardware, the industry is facing a looming physical power ceiling. By next year, AI data centers are projected to require an additional 92 gigawatts of electric power globally, a requirement that is increasingly difficult to meet in a wartime economy where energy infrastructure is a primary military target. This energy bottleneck is forcing a radical rethink of energy procurement, with hyperscalers now exploring direct investments in modular nuclear reactors to ensure their hardware remains operational amidst rising global electricity costs.
Finally, we look at the logistics and supply chain networks that serve as the vital arteries of global commerce, which are currently facing a period of intense structural rewiring. The Strait of Hormuz remains in a state of near paralysis, with maritime traffic having plummeted from 138 daily transits to just a handful of tracked vessels in the last 24 hours. This de facto blockade has forced major ocean carriers to maintain the Cape of Good Hope as their primary route, a detour that adds up to 14 days to voyage times and has triggered a structural shortage of vessel capacity. Logistics analysts warn that, even if the strait were to reopen tomorrow, the ripple effects on port capacity and equipment availability in hubs like Jebel Ali and Salalah
will be felt for months. As a result, 72% of trade professionals have now prioritized the adoption of AI-driven adaptive networks, moving away from just-in-time models toward a just-in-case strategy that emphasizes regional inventory buffers and multimodal transport corridors to bypass volatile maritime choke points. That concludes our global briefing for today. Thank you for joining us.